You need to be the rock in their storm. You don't need to participate in the storm. You need to be the rock in their storm. And then they'll come to you and they'll, like you said, they'll feel safe. They'll feel loved. And for a lot of kids, any words above a whisper, above a few words is gonna charge them up more, right? But you're exactly right. If they just feel your energy.
I'm excited to share today's episode with Michaeleen Doucleff, a PhD, author of New York Times bestselling book Hunt, Gather, Parent, and Peabody Award-winning NPR science correspondent who's turned cultural curiosity into actionable wisdom. While traveling with her young daughter Rosie to live among the Mayan, Inuit, and Hadzabe communities, she discovered how autonomy, cooperation, and quiet guidance can replace control and constant praise. We talk about letting children truly participate in family life, resisting the urge to overprepare them for challenges, and how calm listening can transform both parenting and adult relationships. Her work is a reminder that purpose comes from contribution and that sometimes saying less teaches more. Michaeleen's approach blends anthropology, neuroscience, and lived experience into lessons relevant for parents and non-parents alike. Let's start the show. Hi, Michaeleen. Welcome. Michaeleen, thank you for clarifying. Don't worry.
Everyone says Michaeleen.
Welcome.
Thank you.
As I was saying off camera, there's a little bit of a celebrity sighting for me because your book was on my wife and my book club for we sort of try and get through some books for parenting, and this was a big book that I want to talk about, Hunt, Gather, Parent. But before we start, how's Rosie?
She's almost 10 now. She's fantastic. She's like the most wonderful human, one of the most wonderful human beings I know. She's really spectacular, actually.
It's interesting because I sort of feel like I know you and her a little bit from the book. Obviously, she was 3 at the time.
Yes.
So a lot has changed since then. But I want to kick this off. I just want to give some benefit to the audience here for your background because I think it helps to texturize what your writing is about and what perspective you come from, not only as an NPR correspondent and writer, but you've got a Bachelor of Science in biology from Caltech,
Mm-hmm.
A Master of Science in viticulture and enology. What's enology?
Winemaking.
Okay, there you go. PhD in physical chemistry.
Yes. From Berkeley.
And you've completed a postdoctoral fellowship at the National Institute of Health.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm like trained classically as I was trained to be an academic chemist, basically. And that was the path I was on for a long time.
It's interesting to hear that and to know this, obviously, because the way you write is so investigative from obviously a journalistic perspective, but there's a certain student aspect to how you write, which I think is really compelling. And, for the people who are listening who may not have children or are past the point of having a child sort of in their life and having to raise it, I think it's important. What I took away from this book was more about adults than children per se.
Yes. Sneaky.
And
huh?
there's, the kids are just these blobs that absorb the environment that they're in. There's obviously a lot of nature there, but nurture, I think, has a pretty significant role. And I want to kick this off just to talk about from Hunt, Gather, Parent. So I'm going to jump around on the pages here, but you start out talking about control early in the book. Parents have gone into a control mode, psychotherapist B. Janet Hibb said in 2019. They used to promote autonomy, but now they're exerting more and more control, which makes their kids more anxious and also less prepared for the unpredictable. This really resonated with me because I'm at the playground. I'm around other parents, and there is a constant nit and nat at children correcting their behavior, so on and so forth. Allow me to continue for a minute because I know I'm droning on because this is really you that I want you to be giving this, but I find that control connected to another theme, which is praise. And that's really where I wanted to start out with, because let me read a couple of sections. I want to give you my take on sort of this, and I want you to confirm, deny, object, however you see fit. But when you look across, and I'm quoting you, when you look across cultures and throughout history, our parenting approach that is oodles of praise, little to no criticism, constantly soliciting a child's preference, stands alone. One could argue that we're the only ones ever to act this way. In many cultures, parents praise very little or not at all, yet their children grow up exhibiting all signs of robust mental health, as well as great empathy. Further, in the cultures we'll visit in this book, which I'll address, the children who receive little praise show more confidence and mental strength than their American counterparts who are steeped in praise. The last phrase, which is a little bit later in the book, page 112, praise is a tricky beast. It can fizzle with a kid for many reasons, especially when the praise doesn't feel genuine, doesn't seem justified for the accomplishment, or is simply ever present. When a child's every positive action garners a good job or nice, then praise can undermine their intrinsic motivation, making children less likely to do a task in the future. So I sort of threw a bunch out at you. But with respect to praise and control, which I think have a lot to do with each other.
Yes.
From my perspective, I grew up in a very loving household that was very praise oriented, but I have struggled as an adult to garner more intrinsic validation. And with the praise also came the fact that it was right and wrong rather than correct and incorrect. And I started to pair incorrect with wrong, as in morally wrong. And so it reduced my motivation to seek those errors, to seek those reps.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pause, but I want to hear I want you to go in whatever direction you feel appropriate, but I am very interested in the praise aspect of what you unearthed. And for last segment for audience, in Hunt Gather Parent, you traveled to 3 disparate locations, one being the Maya villages of the Yucatan, the other being the Inuit people of the Arctic in Kangaroo.
Kugarok in Canada.
Kugarok. And then Hadzabe, Tanzania.
Yeah,
so
Hadzabe.
Completely outside the U.S. and Western culture. So
yes.
That's the groundwork. I'll stop talking.
Okay. I mean, it's a big topic. You could write a whole book on praise. People have written whole books on praise and how it affects children and how it affects adults. So first of all, just to be really clear, praise is a very new thing in parenting. This is something that arose really in the 80s, and there's a whole story there. Before that, praise was not given, and very infrequent, just as you find in cultures around the world today too. So I think that there is so you can raise incredibly wonderful, confident kids full of self-esteem, full of everything, without really praising them at all. That is number one. That there's more proof of that than the other direction of. But second of all, you're absolutely right in the sense that I think we don't realize how much praise is actually controlling the child, right? Because I think that our hearts are in it, and we're trying to give children praise because we want to boost their confidence and their self-esteem. And this is what a lot of the drive behind giving children praise came from, this idea that if you don't, there was a time in the 80s where parents were told if you don't praise them, they're going to get pregnant as teenagers, they're going to be alcoholics. Just these horrible things that weren't true at all. So there is a good intention there. But I do think that most of the time we are giving praise because we are trying to control their behavior. We're trying to control what they do, what they focus on. It is a manipulative tool. Now, you can say, well, I don't do that. And I'm sure there are examples where parents aren't doing that. But at the end of the day, praise is trying to get a child to do X, continue to do X, type of thing. So I think that's a reason why it's hard for parents to let go of it, because it's they don't have any other tools in their toolbox to control a child's behavior effectively. And that's a big part of Hunt Gather Parent is this idea that we are so controlling of children, and yet children are so poorly behaved in America. And that is the case. If you look around the world, American children score pretty poorly on scales of behavior and emotional regulation, emotional intelligence, a whole host of behaviors. So then the question becomes, why? What's happening? If we're so controlling, why can't we get them to behave? And I think that there's a positive feedback loop that happens a little bit, where it's like we control, they don't behave well, we can try to control more. But I think at the end of the day, the problem is we don't have any other tools. We aren't taught other tools to help a child learn to respect parents, learn to do chores, voluntarily want to do chores, learn to take care of their siblings, learn to, calm themselves down, be autonomous, right? We don't have these tools. We've forgotten these tools. And a big part of the book and me traveling to those places was to try to learn these tools. So you can throw control just throw it out. It doesn't work. As human beings, we are not meant to be controlled. We evolved not to be controlled. So throw that out and then start learning these other tools that really can be effective. And praise is just a very, very weak tool.
So something that you're talking about as it relates to praise, and follow me here for a second. I had a dog rehabilitator, which was a very, very popular show. Talk about, and I had a personal experience with him, and bear with me because I'm going to land the plane here. It is not as outlandish as it sounds, but he talks about this very specific thing. A lot of dog owners tell their dogs to sit, lay down, to control the dog. But his ultimate motivation was to be connected to the dog, for the dog to listen, to be a part of the tribe,
right,
to be part of the pack, and to be conscious of how that dog's behavior is integrating into the overall society that they are a part of.
Right.
And I found a lot of similarities as I was reading this book. One thing that you mentioned is, so the parents only choose to instruct when the instruction also helps transmit the value of cooperation.
That's right.
And there's something interwoven in all three of these communities about the cognizance and awareness, even for very, very young children.
Absolutely.
Who are in between, who are maybe not the oldest or maybe the oldest, but are also caring for a grandmother and a parent and also a child, to understand the role that they should have, when they should leave, when they should fall back, how to fill the gaps. So there's a lot more openness. I would say it's less egocentric in a lot of ways.
Oh,
right?
It's completely, this is what's missing, like in this whole parenting world right now, right? This whole gentle parenting, not gentle parenting, like there's like this whole, thing. And what's missing in all of these is this connection to others, right? And teaching children that you're part of this group. And I would argue, and there's a lot of evidence that supports it, that as human beings, we have a very strong fundamental need to work with other people. Like we know it, right? That little kids are born helpful, right? That toddlers want to clean the windows. They jump up to help. There's all this experimental data showing that children in America are born really helpful. And something happens. It gets eroded away. By the time they're 7, 8, 9, they don't want to be helpful anymore. Well, this isn't the case in one could argue the rest of the world, besides European societies. Children don't lose that innate, inherent helpfulness that they're born with. So we are actually doing something in our society that takes this away, or erodes it, I would say. It's not gone. But we all have this like need inside of us. It's a fundamental need of being human, to help our families, to help the people that love us. And in fact, when we don't teach children that, I think we start to create, I think, a lot of problems. It's a very big disservice. So in the Maya culture, one of the things that the parents will tell you is that it's the job of the parent to find opportunities for the child to help, for the child to have purpose in the family, that's a key function of the parent. In our society, we think it's the opposite. We think it's our job as the parent to do all the work and have the child like sit there and, be entertained by either us or a screen, right? And I would argue that we're really doing children disservice when we do this, that we as human beings have two big fundamental needs. One is autonomy. One is the sense that I kind of control my day-to-day actions and movements and kind of, right? And the other one is cooperation, working together, as you said, like a pack, like a team. Because what this does is this tells the child, I'm going to be taken care of, right? I'm safe. And those two needs, autonomy and cooperation, you think about them, they're kind of opposite of each other, right? And so that's why it's tough. It's this sweet spot between allowing the child to have this autonomy, this independence, this freedom, but at the same time having this very, very clear connection where they're helping in their family. And for a little child, like a toddler or 5, 6, 7-year-old, it is very tiny, tiny things. It's like chopping, stirring the pot of pancake batter in the morning. Like, that's it, going with the parent to the post office, hanging out with the parent at the, picking out something from the aisle at the grocery store. And then, as the child gets older, these tasks expand. And then you start to see how cooperation and autonomy start to go hand in hand. And it's really beautiful because the helping then gives the child chances for autonomy. So this is so central. And this is what is just so missing in the parenting zeitgeist and like the trendy parenting stuff right now is this connection. And that's truly how you connect to a child, is by finding opportunities for them to help you and including them in your life.
So I want to talk about the zeitgeist that you're referring to, because you mentioned the 1980s, basically a line of thinking that resulted from the 1980s. I think if it's the one that you reference in the book, I'm familiar with what you're referring to. So I'd love for you to explore that. But as it relates to now, I'm thinking of two distinct aspects or characteristics of a modern parent. One is, which you disabuse very quickly, this need to constantly entertain your child, to get more toys for them. I mean, we've seen toddlers play inside a used box for hours and have a terrific time with only cardboard.
Right.
The other is a little bit, I think, that maybe stems back to that study, but I sometimes wonder or think that parents state things at the playground or in front of other people so that their peers
can hear them,
don't judge them for a certain, what might be viewed as a lack of involvement. So I'm curious, can you reference that study and maybe expand on what I'm
You mean
asking?
the study about praise? Is that the one, or which?
Well, the one I was thinking of was the doctor who, or may not have been a doctor, who ended up writing not a cheat sheet, but a guide that was ultimately for foster homes as a means to how to raise children, which was partially informed, if not completely misinformed, and led a society down the road toward a style of raising children that is dissimilar to anything else in the world. You mentioned here that 96% of all studies are Eurocentric. They're based on Europeans, when Europeans are comprising 12% of the entire population.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we look back at like kind of how we've gotten to this point today, where we kind of have forgotten how to parent in many ways, we have to go back to like, where does this parenting advice that we get come from, right? And a lot of the advice today, especially with babies, you can trace back to like, I think it's either the 1700s or the 1800s. It's far. It's over 150 years ago. And basically what was happening was, at the time, there were these foundling hospitals in orphanages where doctors and nurses and people were taking care of like dozens, even hundreds of babies and children. And the nurses and the doctors, one of the doctors wrote this pamphlet to help the caretakers in these orphanages take care of, mass number of babies and a mass number of children. And what they found was that parents outside the orphanages were actually really interested in these pamphlets, and they started buying them. And at the time, what was happening was that parents were losing their teachers, right? They were starting to lose the people that taught them how to parent. So in the past and across all the world, people learned to parent from other parents, their parents, from the older generation that either lives with them or lives near them. And then they also learn a lot of parenting when they're children, because they're raising siblings or cousins. But during this time, parents were starting to lose those teachers. And this is in Europe. And so they were hungry for advice. They were like, we don't know what to do with a baby. We don't know how to get the baby to sleep. We don't know how to get the baby to eat. We don't know what to do with a toddler. And so they started buying these pamphlets that the doctors were making for this kind of industrialization of childcare. And a lot of the advice that we hear today, you can track back to these pamphlets that have just kind of been regurgitated and, kind of rolled over, kind of the extremes from one end to the other, back and forth, echoing through time. But this is why we're in the situation we are in today, where we have children and we don't really know how to parent, and we don't have these tools. And so we kind of then rely on these tricks that we see on social media, or we rely on this, really control, this idea of control, this very kind of strict, I'm going to tell the child what to do at every moment, sort of parenting, which is really common in the cities. Like, if you pay attention, parents will be telling their child something to do like every couple seconds.
Right.
And that is unheard of around the world. Like, if you pay attention, I think you're in LA, right? You said there will be parents on the playground who are not doing that. And you can probably ask them, how long have you been in this country? Because they probably haven't been here that long. Or they're part of, a cultural group in America that doesn't have this kind of European background, industrial background. But yeah, so that's kind of the reason why we are here today, is because of these pamphlets, which then got turned into parenting books. And now one could argue, some of the stuff online you can take straight out of these books. Some of the stuff online and that's really popular today, though, is really unique and new, and really kind of many parents around the world would think is totally crazy.
The playground thing is for sure real. I mean,
yes, it is.
You advise taking a stopwatch out and seeing if you can go 20 minutes without saying something to your kid.
Yeah.
And if you're not aware of it, if you're not mindful of that, that is something that is unusual for a lot of parents. And I will say there's a lot of stuff in this book that we started to experiment with, and it brought a lot of awareness to what we were and weren't doing. But we have seen a very significant. Now, my son is 2 years, 9 months old.
Oh,
so I sort of feel like it's a little bit ideal, but we, within a very short amount of time, sub 4 weeks, I'd say probably closer to 2 weeks, the amount of his willingness to contribute, his listening, there's no more there's negotiation at bedtime,
sure.
5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. We're still working on that process.
He's not tired.
During the day, right. But during the day when we're, he's spilling crackers, I ask him to sort of give them to me. He'll give them to me, and I'm not taking it away from him. And I ask him to do something else. And then after he does it, he says, can I have him back now? And it's like this cooperation that was a trust that sort of gets built as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way
that
to
is
put it.
Really, there's a lot of experiments you put into this book that I think are compelling, not just for adults with respect to children, but also adults with respect to adults. For example, one thing that you talk about is you talk about knowing when not to help, but also sort of when two children one tattles on another, rather than sort of going all out on them, you just sort of, let things simmer a little bit. Wait for a second. See how it sort of manifests itself. I've started to see even that application in my adult life have some really terrific consequences.
Yeah. I think, one of the things next couple weeks, I think I'm going to be on CBS morning, whatever. I'm really excited because the book's been out for like 4 years, and but so I was really trying to think of like these kind of really important nutshells of the book, and I think one of the big ones is just be quiet more often. Like, just be quiet. Like we say way too much, and I think like, when in doubt, just be quiet. Or just say, that's interesting. I say that so much to to Rosie all the time, even now, especially as she gets older, even more, like, that's interesting. And then let things unfold, let it unfold. Like, or let them then tell you more about it. Let them have their perspective on it, you know? I was with a family a couple of weeks ago, and the little girls, they weren't that little. They were like 9 and 12, and they're, Rosie's almost 10 now, so it's about the same age. And they were going to overnight camp for a week for the first time. And it was incredible how much the mom like set up anxiety for these kids by what she was saying. Like she just kept talking about it. You're going to be, you might be afraid. You might you might want to come home. Like there's just all this stuff. And I really wanted to tell her, like, just be quiet. Like, just be quiet. Let the child have their experience of things. On that note, we used to live in San Francisco. And when Rosie was little, she had a dentist procedure. And the mom told me, or the dentist told me, she's actually in her 60s, so she's come from a different generation. She told me, she said, please do not tell Rosie about what's going to happen. Please, please. She was like begging me. She was like, parents tell their kid everything that happens. You're going to get the mask on. You're going to get this drill. You're going to and she says, they come in here terrified. And she says, she's like, I know it comes from like a good place. You're trying to prepare the child. You're trying to we're always trying to prepare the child. But what you're doing is you're putting your experiences, your fears, your anxieties on these little children, or on these 9-year-olds, these 10-year-olds. And I think it's a real big disservice to them. And just, again, nowhere in the world would parents do these things. If the child's going to be harmed, yes, okay, we're going to prepare for this, or we're going to stop it, or right. But just kind of letting children, what I kind of think of as like, it's a form of autonomy. Right? It's like an emotional autonomy. It's like letting them experience their life as it comes, and their experiences of things can be totally different than yours. And I bet you, especially with the little ones, they'll be less anxiety fueled. And like because there's many times when I'm anxious about something, and if I keep my mouth shut, Rosie's not anxious about it. And you know what? It ends up being fine. And like, I never needed to like come in there. So I really think you hit on like something that's so important. Like just, you can always talk about things later. There's always going to be time to talk, right? It's just like, be quiet. And there's a lot of things in children's lives you can't fix with words. You can't fix them. You can't fix it in the moment, and you can't fix it with your mouth. And so just let it be. Give them a touch on the shoulder. Like so many times when I want to say something to Rosie, I'll just touch her. Or these other little girls, just children in our society are really starving for physical touch. And I think that is so much more powerful, especially to little children, than all these words that we're taught to say there's, even as a mature adult, if somebody's like saying all these words to me, I feel more overwhelmed, right? And so to a little person, just take a pause.
Well, you sort of allude to this multiple times throughout the book, but this disservice of the fulfillment of contributing to your family, of going through this. Now, I think about a parent, and using a dentist's office as an example, the parent takes on this burden when a baby is born that I will always protect you, right? I will want to keep you safe. But the reality is you are not doing them any service by disallowing them from falling off a bike. They need to understand that falling off a bike hurts. It makes you not want to fall off a bike, right? I mean, this is a very rudimentary example, but the same thing can be applied to love. You don't want them not to fall in love because your heart is going to get broken at some point in your teenage years. You need to let that happen. And that autonomy seems to come from, our greatest, I think the greatest success I could achieve among them as a dad would be not to put my baggage onto my son.
Yeah.
I would like for my son to develop his own baggage, but not my own. Like, I don't want to give him
You're going to give him your baggage no matter what. So
for sure.
For some of it, but you don't need to like verbally put it on him.
Well, that's sort of what I'm saying. I want him to identify the reality of the world from his own purview.
Right.
There's I don't know why this sticks out as a story that has always stuck with me, but this young girl is talking to her mom over Thanksgiving. They're making Thanksgiving dinner, and she cuts the ham in half and puts it into the oven. And the little girl says, "Why do you cut the ham in half?" And the mom says, "I don't know, ask grandma." And she goes to ask grandma, and grandma says, "I don't know, ask great grandma." So goes to ask great grandma, and great grandma goes, "Oh, because the ovens were half the size." And it's like, you don't really, if you just pass on these traditions without actually contemplating what the reality of right now is, you are taking away the privilege of that child from exploring whatever might be better than however you're living your own reality.
Yeah, I think you can make the same argument like with the control. Like if you're just constantly controlling everything they do. Let's say that kid wants to stick the ham in the oven without cutting it in half. Many parents would be like, "No, you have to cut it in half," right?
Right.
But it's like, why not? Why not put it in there without cutting? Right? Like children actually have these amazing ideas when you give them some space to experiment and help you in the kitchen, help you clean up, help you do the laundry. I think you'll be stunned. Even your little 3-year-old will have some amazing ideas for improvements of these processes. But you have to step back and like give them some space. You also have to believe that they want to help. This is a massive problem in our society. We believe that children don't want to help. We think they're greedy. We think they're selfish. They just want to sit on their phones. They just want to sit in front of Netflix. But actually, again, that goes against so much data from around the world and from psychologists here. Children want to be useful. There was, and they want to learn skills. They want to learn how to cook. They want to learn how to do the laundry. They do. They have to. Otherwise, they're going to have stinky clothes one day. Because of our perception of children, then we don't give them these opportunities. We think we're hurting them by asking them to help. Right? But in actuality, we're really helping them. So there's a study, there's a report that came out on like the National Adolescence Committee, some commission committee from the government about the state of adolescence in America right now. There's this mental health crisis. And a big portion of this report is about how adolescents feel like they don't have purpose in life. They don't have a purpose in their family. They don't have a purpose in their community. Their lives feel purposeless and meaningless, and this makes them feel bad. Well, this purpose and meaning doesn't just happen when you're 15, right? This is something that parents cultivate and nurture in a child from the beginning. In many communities, from the toddler, from the baby stage, the babies are with the mom when they do all these things, and so this is something that you could start with your toddler, but you could start with your 6-year-old, you could start with your 9-year-old. And what you're doing is you're teaching them how to have purpose, how to contribute. And that, I will argue, and a lot of these psychologists on this report would argue, will protect them from mental health problems in their adolescence years, in their young adult years. Because again, we, as human beings, we need to feel purposeful to feel good. And that doesn't matter what age you are. And so a lot of the book is about changing that perception, right? That children want to help, that they have an innate desire to help. And if you keep thinking they don't, eventually they'll be like, "Oh, she's right," or "He's right."
Yeah.
And that's what the data show, that's why the 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds don't want to anymore, because you've been telling them they don't want to for 9 years. But I truly believe there's a flame in all of us that stays lit, and you just have to fan it, and you have to kind of slowly bring it out at those older years. I'll tell you this great story. It's not in the book, but because it happened after the book came out. But I was talking to a researcher and a psychologist. She's a Mexican-American psychologist, and she was telling me that her toddler, she was doing laundry the other day, and her toddler came over and started like looking like he was like she was balling up the clothes and kind of throwing them. And she said, a lot of American parents would think that the toddler was playing, right? That balling up the clothes and throwing them, making a huge mess, right? And she said, but she was trying to fold the clothes. She didn't know how to fold the clothes. She was imitating the mom, and she was trying to fold the clothes, and then she was trying to put them in the shelf. And that was like the little toddler's version of folding the clothes. And I don't know what's the right answer, whether she's trying to make a mess or she's trying to fold the clothes. But data would suggest she's probably trying to fold the clothes, because there's a lot of data to support that toddlers want to be helpful and they mimic the adults. But second, if the mom says, hey, she's trying to fold the clothes, let's look what happens. Okay, you're trying to fold the clothes? Thank you. Well, let me help you fold them. Let me show you. See, we do it like this. So now the mom is, one, acknowledging the child is being helpful, telling the child she's helpful, teaching the child to be helpful, including the child in her chores, building a connection with the child, right? So that the next time the mom's folding the clothes, I bet the child runs back over, wants to do it again, right? Now let's look at the other thing. Let's say that you interpret this as the child making a mess, throwing the clothes around the room. How does the parent respond? Probably, what are you doing? Why are you making a mess? You know, like, get out of here. I'm trying to fold the clothes, right? So there's like anger. There's a disconnection. There's also telling the child that she's making it a mess, even though she might be wanting to fold the clothes, right? So it's a completely different outcome. And over time, these two different outcomes create two different children. One is a child that grows up wanting to help the parent, feeling included, feeling purposeful. You know, it's the Rosie yesterday at 9.5 who, Mama, grab the clothes, grab the basket, let's put them outside, telling me to do it. You know, the other one is a child who eventually probably will stop coming over and asking or wanting to be near the mom, and who will grow up thinking, I'm making a mess. I just make a mess, right? And so I think that not only is it about control, but it's also about how we perceive children as humans, right? I mean, you could do this with your spouse.
The perception thing, I think, is real to me because you mentioned, I think it's in the Inuit community that views temper tantrums as a childish behavior. No adult ever exhibits a loss of emotional control. They never yell. They never have outbursts. They are accepting that the child is operating within their nature. And they're not being selfish. They're not being anything. This is just operating within their nature. And to the extent, it just seems logical to me that if you allow the child the agency to process that, to figure out wins, for lack of a better word, of accomplishing, participating, fulfilling the modeling behavior that they're witnessing around them, they start to develop some emotional regulation as a relates to that, right? Because they start to develop the autonomy that you're referring to, but they're also digesting that I can't fold it, but mom's going to help me fold it. And you just keep through the frustration of doing it until finally I did it. They yell, I did it. There's something really satisfying as a parent to witness that, but as a child, it's giving you the confidence that I'm capable of potentially doing this and another step.
That's right. And it is, there's so many benefits to chores. We could talk about that the whole time, but you're absolutely right. I think, there is, in the Inuit community and in a lot of cultures, there's this acceptance. Often you will hear in public places like planes and public spaces, a parent yelling at a very small child to be quiet. Yeah. And it's like, okay, first of all, very small children aren't born knowing how to be quiet. They're not. In fact, they're born knowing how to scream, is what they're born knowing how to do. And so accepting that that's a skill, right? That takes time to learn, just as it does for us to read and do math. And how do we learn to read and do math? We practice it, right? And we see our parents doing it. We see our other people doing it. And we're given space to do it wrong, right? It's okay to get the math wrong at first. And so parents see that and they say, okay, this child is born not knowing how to regulate her emotions. I'm going to regulate mine in front of her and know that is going to teach her how. And it's not because she's selfish and wants to press buttons and no, none of that stuff. Again, very antisocial view of a child. It's because she just doesn't know. She doesn't have understanding. She's not mature, right? And so, yes, giving her this space, but also modeling it, right? And being regulated ourselves, which really just involves being quiet and being calm. Way more effective than saying anything to a child.
Not easy for everybody.
Not easy. No, because I think because we were never taught it. Like I was never
Right.
taught that, right? My dad would just yell. My mom would just
Yeah.
get really upset, right? Like there would just, my mom would like try to do the gentle parenting thing for about 15 minutes to 30 minutes and then yell.
Right. Right.
You know, that's the dark underbelly of the gentle parenting world. So I was not taught that. Our society doesn't teach us that. Think about how many times you've been yelled at in the last like 6 months, right? And so, yes, I think first we have to learn that, and then we can pass it on, and then we have this skill that we can use everywhere too. And it's very powerful, right? To be able to keep your calm when the poop hits the fan, you know, wherever
For
you
sure.
are, you know, it's
For
a
sure.
very powerful position to be in, and you can learn it. It's not hard. I mean, it takes time, but
Right. Practice. Just
you
like
practice.
anything.
That's right. And there are some like tricks to it too. Like we tend to think that it's about squelching the feelings in the moment, but that doesn't work. It's really about practicing these other emotions, not in those heated moments with children too. And then you can kind of grab those calmer emotions because you've practiced them. They're like emotions are like muscles. You have to use them, and then they're more easily, you can grab onto them more in those heated moments instead of turning to like this very strong.
Well, I'm hoping that you can give us an example, and one that was demonstrated in the book was mind-blowingly effective to me, and how quickly it sort of happened. But when my son started to escalate a situation, I would typically negate it or provide a more stern disruption to it. But the counterpoint that is like the least expected in Western culture, which is just to, go real quiet and like give him a hug and say, are you okay? And to see this reversal of just seeing him, he's seeing red, and for him to just, all of a sudden I can see him coming back to the world, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I know you don't want to wear this, but we have to try and focus on it. You have to be adaptable. And this isn't me pointing at anything successful I'm doing. I'm just trying to showcase that experiment was a really defining example of how my natural inclination, which by the way is patterned, it's something I recognized myself growing up. That was how things were dealt with.
Yeah.
Just to see that the opposite was so resounding. It was immediate. He just felt loved, not attacked, and the reception was completely different. So is that the type of example you're referring to? I'm hoping you have some others, because I want to share from your perspective.
That's a beautiful example. And I had a very similar experience with Rosie, because she would kind of come at me with a lot of emotion and intensity, and sometimes even like violence and everything. And I would kind of come back at the same level, right? The same energy, the same intensity. And there was one night in particular after writing this book and traveling, where I just looked at my husband and I said really calmly, like, she doesn't understand. She's not doing this because she wants to press my buttons. She wants to hit me. She wants to listen. I just said, she doesn't understand. This is a common thing that the Inuit parents would say. She doesn't understand. She doesn't have understanding. And Rosie looked at me like, what? Like, I will never forget the look on her face. She was just like stunned. Like, you're not going to get angry at me? You're not going to like fight back? And I was like, and I think I just repeated it. And she did exactly what you said. She just completely came down, and like her whole face softened, and like everything softened. And it was exactly what she needed. She needed me to be that calmness in her storm. As one of the moms says in that section, like, you need to be the rock in their storm. You don't need to participate in the storm. You need to be the rock in their storm. And then they'll come to you, and they'll, like you said, they'll feel safe. They'll feel loved. And for a lot of kids, any words above a whisper, above a few words, is gonna charge them up more, right? But you're exactly right. They just feel your energy. It's just your vibe, right? I mean, you think about it, nonverbal children are nonverbal, very unverbal for a long time, right? And all they can feel is your energy, and take your energy. And so if you're yelling or you're in this like stern kind of mode, it's I think it scares a lot of them. I think they're not sure about it. I think they're trying to understand it. They're trying to match it, and so it really is just about bringing this real calm, this peacefulness, because everything is okay. I mean, it really is okay. Like I know we're not supposed to tell children that they're okay, but it's okay to tell them that. And like because they are okay. Like many children live in the most wonderful places in the world. They have food and love and beautiful homes, and they're okay. They're really okay. And just feeling that yourself. And I think knowing that them being upset and them being uncomfortable and them being not so happy in a moment is okay too.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah. That's life. We that's being a kid, and they'll stop. You don't need to fix it right then. You don't, this is something that I actually ended up bringing to my marriage, was like, what I think of as like emotional autonomy, like just allowing people to have emotions.
Yeah.
Sure. You're upset.
For sure.
Like, okay, be upset. No, I'm here. I wanted to fix it, right? I wanted to fix Rosie's. I wanted to fix my husband's. I wanted to fix my mom's. But I can't. I can't fix it. I'm not them. But I can tell them, like, I'm here if you need me. But, have your emotions. We say now, like, you can have as big emotions as you want. They can't hurt other people. Because Rosie's 9 now. She can't hit me now. But she learned that a long time ago. But it's like, get your emotions out. Go do what you need to do. You just can't hurt yourself, and you can't hurt other people. And you really can't hurt our home, like our environment. Like, you just can't take it out. But, have your emotions.
So I want to be mindful of time here, and I want to give a little bit of, I want to hear about Dopamine.
Yes, Dopamine.
Your forthcoming book. So I want to give you a little bit of time to tease that out, because I'm very excited about that coming out. But before you do, two things. One you mentioned before, and I conflated the wrong study. Can you close the loop on praise? Where did the praise idea come from?
So it's in my book, and you can find it, but it came from this report out of California, I think in the 80s, that made all these correlations between self-esteem and child's health, mental health, physical health.
Right.
And it was all tied, self-esteem was all tied to praise. And it was like, it scared the bejeebs out of parents. Like, if you don't praise your kids, they're going to have all these problems. And it really stuck, like, really hard in our society. And again, I think it's parents being hungry for tools, like really hungry for tools that work. And this seems like an easy one, like just lay on the praise and like things, but it's a very, very weak tool. And all of that stuff in that study has been completely shown to not be correct and kind of ridiculous. So,
okay, good. Thank you for closing that loop for my own mental OCD. But I also wanted to ask, you traveling with a 3-year-old is not easy.
No, it's not easy.
And you went to extreme conditions. I'm wondering if you can maybe tether what that experience was like with, it's a broader question, but I'm curious, what have you taken away from those experiences, obviously exemplified in the book, that had the most resounding effect on where Rosie is at 9.5 now? What have you seen to be the most effective at creating a more nurturing environment for her to develop more emotional regulation, more maturity, more connectedness, more purpose, any of those things? I'm just curious if there's anything that stands out that has really resonated as a through line between 3 and 9.5.
So I think there's 3 major things. One thing we talked about is really learning to be quiet. I mean, really, really like you talked about, like saying something every 20 minutes, like learning to be with her and just letting her be, like creating environments where she can just be. And I don't need to, I can watch her, I can keep my eye on her, but as she's gotten older, then this is probably the second thing. So just being quiet, like doing those pauses more. Just really, people need to talk way less and watch more. Because when you watch a child, you learn about them. You learn what they like. You learn what they can do, right? You can learn, oh, this kid could climb a tree. Like if I just let them do it and I'm there watching, wow, they can do it. You learn their limits. You learn who they are. You start to see them. You can't connect to a person you can't see. And if you're talking all the time, you can't see the child. And see in like a deep way, right? But I think the other two things are, one, including her in my life. So I have my job, and I try to include her as much as possible in my job where I can. And I would say, if you can do this with your child, it helps so much. They have this strong drive to learn adult skills and be in the adult world. And we in our society have taken them and just shoved them out of it. And they feel it. And so if you can bring them into your world just a tiny bit, have them staple your papers, put a stamp on mail, like just take them to the post office, like just something that's real, and include them. It brings you so close to the child. So I take her when I travel. It's almost 100% of the time. To be honest, I can't travel without her because I'm so lonely now. I just like, where's Rosie? I need to be with her. So that one thing is like, include them. And it doesn't have to be much, especially at first, just 5 minutes a day, a couple times a week, one meal a week, make the kids, one meal a week. So that's number one, which just grows over time because you learn to love to be with them. I love being with Rosie. The second thing is teaching her slowly over time how to be out in the world. So this is the autonomy bit. It's misrepresented in our society because we think, oh, they're 12 years old, they're 9 years old, go bike to the store. That's not how it works. It's like the 2-year-old, your 3-year-old, go outside and get something. Go get the mail. Go across the street and knock on the neighbor's door and ask them a question. I mean, seriously, the 3-year-old could do that. I would have the 3-year-old doing that, if the street's not too busy. Whatever works, right? But these slowly growing, right? And then over a year, it's like, go down the street. Then it's like, go into the store by yourself. And so like slowly teaching Rosie how to be self-sufficient in our community without me. So at age 10 now, well, she's almost 10. She'll be 10 in November. She bikes to piano lessons by herself. She bikes to on Saturday, she and her friend bike around our little town 6 hours. We don't know where she is. No GPS tracker. These are the things they need. Teaching her to be able to swim by herself. These are skills, just like the emotional autonomy, that need to grow over time. And the beauty of it is as they grow, you're just boosting confidence the whole way. Children don't need to be like these big leaps of autonomy. They need these little tiny increases. The little ones just turning the oven on.
Right.
Sticking something in the oven that's hot, using a sharp knife. Like this is what I say in the new book, which I'll bring up. I call it like scary but fun. That's what kids need every week. Scary but fun. This is a fundamental need of humans. You need it, right? I need it. Like if I don't have scary but fun, I'm like, I need to go on an adventure, you feel it, right? And so this is what children need. And so that's the third thing. So that gets into the next book. So the next book, it comes out in March. It's called Dopamine Kids. And it's basically the two areas of parenting where the ancient cultures didn't help me. Like it didn't work. And that's the screens and ultra-processed foods. And they work in our brain through a very similar mechanism, the two things. And so it's about how they work on our brains, how they work on our children's brains, and how we can use that to really take control back from them and get kids to actually want to do things off the screen and want to eat healthy food. And it's a really fascinating ride. It like completely kind of shifts the view of what screens and ultra-processed foods are doing for kids. So.
Well, I'm excited about that, not just as a parent, but also to read it as an adult, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very excited. Thank you very much for coming on. I cannot recommend your book highly enough, certainly for parents, but there's a lot of great gems in there for people who are not parents any longer or not parents at all. So any closing thoughts or things you think we might have missed?
No, you were great. Thank you so much for having me. It was really interesting and fun.
Thank you so much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I'll be continuing to follow you. Thanks for listening. For a detailed list of episodes and show notes, visit scalesofsuccesspodcast.com. If you found this conversation engaging, consider signing up for our newsletter, where we go even deeper on a weekly basis, sharing exclusive insights and actionable strategies that can help you in your own journey. We'd also appreciate if you subscribed, rated, or shared today's episode. It helps us to attract more illuminating guests, adding to the list of enlightening conversations we've had with New York Times bestsellers, producers, founders, CEOs, congressmen, and other independent thinkers who are challenging the status quo. You can also follow us for updates, extra content, and more insights from our guests. We hope to have you back again next week for another episode of Scales of Success. Scales of Success is an Edge West Capital production.